You direct one of the only Center for African Studies in all of Southeast Asia. And late last year, you gave this fantastic lecture at Professor Kanti Bajpayee's class, where you identified 5 factors that countries in Africa had to look out for or watch out for: climate change, natural resources, weak state capacity, ideology, and great power competition. Now, Eric has given us a sense of what the EU, China, the US are thinking. Can you tell us a little bit about the other emerging powers getting more and more interested in Africa, the ASEAN countries, Turkey, the Gulf states? Is their growing influence overstated, or are they really and truly shaping Africa's landscape and providing an alternative that everybody's talking about?
Let me start by saying, Veda, I guess one would have to dissect and determine what that influence is and indeed how deep it is. So let me start with ASEAN. In ASEAN, there are about 200 companies that one way or the other operate across Africa. These are typically concentrated in agribusiness, palm oil production, extractive industries, some in digital trade. But if you look at the overall trade with Africa of all the 10 ASEAN countries, Southeast Asia, they constitute little more than 2%, give or take, about $60 billion. So last year, I attended the second Indonesia-Africa forums, and that saw 28 African heads of state attend the event in Bali. But that was down from 47 that attended the first event in 2018. I think I think President Prabowo, although he says Africa is close to his heart, Indonesia is not really commemorating 70 years of the historic Bandung conference this year. And this is a pity, because it was Indonesia, after all, which was the first independent Southeast Asian country to establish diplomatic relations with any African country. They opened an embassy in Lagos in 1965. Indonesia, which is the biggest country in Southeast Asia, has a trade with Africa of only about less than $15 billion. That's less than what Singapore has with Africa, which is somewhere between 20 to 22 billion. In Singapore, there are about 155 firms working across 40 markets. Again, these are in the oil and gas, extractive, consumer, digital, agribusiness, trade sectors. But curiously, Malaysia happens to be one of the most prolific investors in Africa. Its FDI stock, and I'm not talking about trade here, is almost $20 billion. Funny enough, there's something magical about this $20 billion figure. Japan's trade with Africa is around the same figure. So when it comes to Africa, really it is China that counts. But I think Singapore's Southeast Asia, Singapore, relations has a long way to go. Now coming to Turkey, its influence is something of a mixed blessing. So let me explain how. In 2009, it had only about a dozen diplomatic missions. Now it has 43 embassies across Africa. Turkish engineering firms routinely compete with the Indian firms and Chinese firms for projects. I was in Rwanda last year for the Africa CEO Forum. It was held at this fantastic Kigali Convention Center. That it was built by a Turkish firm called Summa. Turkey has also constructed the Bank of Kigali Sports Arena, Amahoro National Stadium in Rwanda. Its engineering firms have transformed the face of Dakar. They've built airports there, stadiums, and even Olympic swimming pools. Uganda has signed a massive deal with a Turkish firm called Yapı Merkezi for the construction of a 200 plus kilometer section of a standard gauge railway, which incidentally, by the way, it was given to China, but taken back and given to this Turkish firm. Its mining firm, MTA, is looking for gold in Niger. In Algeria, Turkish petroleum companies are looking for oil. Turkish airline, which flew only to 4 African cities, now flies to over 40. So Turkish trade with Africa now tops $30 billion. That's more than Singapore's trade with Africa. And I have no doubt, as long as President Erdogan, if President Erdogan remains in power, I know he's facing some domestic challenges, that Turkey-Africa relationship will only grow bigger. And the reason for that is, Africa is a place where it appears to be exercising a muscular foreign policy. At one end is a soft power appeal of its brand of Islam that marries religious conservatism with industrialization and technology modernity. One spectacular showcase of this soft power is the Blue Mosque in Ghana. There's even a hospital in Mogadishu named after him. 14,000 African students have received scholarships from Turkey. Turkish soap operas are winning fans all over Africa. It has trained Somali security forces. Its drones have seen action in Ethiopia and Libya. It sells these drones to at least 10 African countries. You have this legendary Bayraktar drone, which Turkey is particularly proud of. So to answer, is Turkish influence in Africa overstated? It depends. In Somalia and Libya, it's not overstated. In Ethiopia and Uganda and Rwanda, Turkish influence may be overstated, but their leadership of these countries exercise far more agency than what the international media would give them credit for. In South Africa, Turkish influence is almost non-existent. So it depends. The same, I would say, much the same for the Gulf states as well. So UAE has invested in energy, transport, logistics. I was in Berbera back in 2018. It was a beautiful but barren seaside town in Somaliland. But thanks to DP World, Berbera now has emerged among the busiest ports in Africa. African firms have registered offices in Dubai. Dubai is often a regional head office for a lot of foreign firms wanting to do business in Africa. But at the same time, UAE is also a center from where Africa loses almost $90 to $93 billion a year through smuggling and illicit financial outflows. A lot of African strongmen and their cronies, launder their ill-gotten wealth out of UAE. Dubai's property market is particularly an irresistible draw. By some counts, 95% of the gold coming out of conflict zones in Sudan, DRC, somehow shows up in the UAE. So it's become, so it's a mixed bag. And you will remember the infamous Gupta brothers who were accused of state capture by South Africa. Where did they find shelter? In the UAE. So it's again a mixed bag. How much it is overstated or how much it is understated depends which country we are talking about. In the case of Sudan, the UAE is playing a particularly diabolical role in helping fuel a civil war by backing the RSF, the Rapid Support Force. It's a militia group that has been accused of terrorizing unarmed civilians and ethnic minorities. They've backed the favorite proxies in Libya. So it's effectively ended its sovereignty. They're not the only ones to blame. There are other players in the play as well. But all I'm saying is that when it comes to these lesser great power competition in Africa, the outcome for Africa is mixed.